I don't know if you caught the story. A lot of people have been asking me if I've covered Common Core or not. And I have in the past. In fact, I'll be talking about it in greater detail in just a moment. There was a man arrested over the weekend, or actually it was probably last week that this happened. He was at a public event asking a question concerned about the future of his daughter and how this would impact education. He was actually arrested. Journalists all over the country were outraged. They're saying, what about First Amendment rights? You have a right to ask a question in a public venue like that. Listen to this. Here's just a snippet of the sound that unfolded with this poor father addressing this issue of Common Core.
Okay, my question is, how is lowering America's educational standards to prepare kids for community college? Because that's what it's all about. Because you mentioned before, the emphasis is, and I have some stuff here to quote before this guy tries to carry me out.
Okay.
But, hey, listen, parents, take control. This is not a CNN political debate. Let's go.
Let him ask his question.
This is what I will say, in fairness to everyone who asked questions, we do have some that are dovetailing to that.
Let him ask his question.
So the next question. So this is a dovetail.
Don't stand for this. You're sitting here like cattle. You have questions. You confront them. They don't want to do it.
And there you have it. That's just a window into it. What ended up happening was a big security guard comes. I think it must have been an off-duty cop, and whips out his handcuffs. They take the guy outside, cuff him, take him to jail. He was arrested Thursday night. This happened down in Towson, Maryland, at a public forum after a father vocally expressed his concerns about the school district's plan to use Common Core standards in their curriculum. For some of you, this may be news. You're like, well, what's Common Core? Why would a father be arrested over? Why would he be forcibly removed from a meeting by a police officer after he interrupted school board superintendents? I'll fill you in on that and more, and I'll let you know what Common Core is. Believe it or not, your kids may be exposed to it. Stay with me.
Okay, my question is, how is lowering America's education standards to prepare kids for community college? Because that's what it's all about. Because you mentioned before, the emphasis is, and I have some stuff here to quote before this guy tries to carry me out.
Okay.
But, hey, listen, parents, take control. This is not a CNN political debate. Let's go.
Let him ask his question.
All right. And the audio you heard, actually, I'll put it on Facebook.com. I'll actually put the video up so you can watch this video for yourself. Unbelievable. It is an amazing story. I had talked about Common Core, I guess a couple weeks ago, and I'm amazed at the feedback I've gotten since the last time I introduced people to it. It's new to me. I didn't really know a whole lot about it until it came across my radar. And to be honest with you, I was quite shocked by what I discovered and decided to highlight it for many of you. And I had on the air with me the last time just a great authority on it, Dr. Duke Pesta, who's an academic director of the Freedom Project Education, has been active in educational reform. He is a professor of English at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. We talked about it. But so many people were inquiring about it, I thought I'd revisit it. And again, wanted to fill you in on what I just am shocked would unfold here in America. Here is a father concerned about what this program means, and was actually arrested Thursday night at a public forum in Towson, Maryland. He was a concerned father. He was forcibly removed from this meeting after a police officer, I guess he interrupted the school board. Now, I guess they wanted the questions on a piece of paper. Officer takes him out, actually starts to manhandle him, actually pushes him through the door, and then cuffs him, makes this father sit on the curb in front of the school. Talk about humiliating, right? Here's a father, and it's humiliating for the child that goes to that school as well. And of course, he cried out to everybody there, look, this is America. Don't stand for this. You're sitting here like cattle. He challenged those who were there to basically, ask questions about what this program is all about and what it's going to mean for their children. This guy now is going to be charged with second-degree assault on a police officer, faces $2,500 fine, up to 10 years in prison. Now, of course, that's probably all the max. But he was charged with disturbing school operation, which carries another $2,500 and up to 6 months in jail. And basically, a lot of parents are upset about this, and I know a lot of Americans are only now beginning to learn a little bit about this. And joining me today is Dr. Duke Pesta, academic director of Freedom Project Education, and as I said, been with me in the past. And Doctor, thank you for your time again. It's great to have you back.
Hey, Thank you for having me, Drew.
Fill me in, would you? I mean, did you see that video as well? I saw it over the weekend. It was circulating through some major news outlets as well. And I know a lot of people are only now beginning to discover what Common Core is all about. What was your reaction to this father, his arrest, and all the charges that are now leveled against him?
Well, the arrest is laughable, but it's a response to the really top-down way that Common Core has been imposed. Keep in mind, Drew, that nobody ever anywhere has voted on Common Core. No school boards, no state departments of education, no Congress, no Senate. This curriculum has been imposed on people without any representation and behind closed doors. And so people get upset when people are very concerned about their kids. And you saw in this instance that cowardly school board, they only wanted questions on cards.
Yeah,
they could pick the ones they wanted to answer, the softball ones, and ignore the rest. And this father just had enough.
It's amazing. Explain to the audience. We can talk more about the father as well. I just, I can kind of commiserate with a lot of journalists. I mean, this is America. You should have the ability to be able to ask a question without fear of arrest and fines. And that's what happened with this man. They should have just let him answer this question and then usher him out afterwards, or that would have been all that it took. But instead, he is now. He's now facing a lot of fines and some public embarrassment. A lot of journalists were saying, look, what happened to our First Amendment? We have the right to ask questions. Whatever happened to freedom of the press as well? Give me your take on that. I mean, what is it about this ideology that would cost an American citizen, a father at a school board meeting, arrest?
Well, we're seeing an unprecedented overreach by government. The Fed, as you know, Obamacare is in the news, and everybody is just terrified of what's coming down the road. But you see with Common Core, and people are actually referring to Common Core as Obama Core for the very same reasons, that this is top-down, there's very little input. It's that you've got to pass it to see what's in it mentality that's gotten us in so much trouble previously. And they came for our bodies with Obamacare. Now they're coming for our kids in terms of this nationalized set of standards that's going to make educating kids, particularly educating kids in a Catholic way, very, very difficult moving forward.
Well, let's do this. A lot of people are saying, look, what I heard happen there is horrible, but I know nothing about Common Core. What would it be that has a father so outraged he was willing to be arrested over it? What is the Common Core curriculum? It was started, of course, inspired by Bill Gates and their foundation. The government, the Obama administration, has strongly embraced this. What is so dangerous about Common Core? What is it, and why is it a danger to our children?
Well, the propaganda you get is that this is just a nationalized set of standards so that everybody is learning the same thing at the same time, and it's purportedly supposed to be very rigorous. There's all sorts of recent studies that, first of all, Common Core methodologies have never been means tested in this country. The idea that you keep getting these rosy prognostications that this is going to be wonderful for education, that's just all made up. They don't know that, number one. Number two, one of the great problems of Common Core is the people who wrote it. It was lobbyists. Bill and Melinda Gates put up roughly $160 million of their own money. This was done behind closed doors. Two relatively small lobbying groups, the National Governors Association and the CCSO. And these organizations crafted this entirely without input from many educators. There are very few educators whatsoever had a say in how Common Core standards were put together. And so a quick overview, in 2 seconds here.
Sure.
No Child Left Behind, the previous exercise in big government education, was such a universal disaster that states wanted out. So the Obama administration created this program called Race to the Top, in which they promised millions and millions of dollars to cash-strapped states for education. This was 3-4 years ago, and the only proviso was, we'll give you this money, but you have to accept Common Core standards when they're finally released in a number of years from now. And so 46 states in the Union signed on to Common Core standards simply to get the money without ever having seen them.
Wow, that's amazing. I just got word that the Florida governor has rejected Common Core today.
Well, he's rejected the organization that does the testing, Park Scoring. That's huge. That is a huge blow to Common Core. The thing that's so frustrating, Drew, is that states all across the Union, they've only really seen what Common Core is for about 8 months now. We've only really had about 8 months now to look at the actual standards, and only math and English have been rolled out. They are so bad that states all across the Union are questioning it, starting to pull out of it. The problem is that so much of it's already in the schools. The boards of education have gone ahead and quietly implemented this, and nobody knew about it.
Well, my guest today is Dr. Duke Pesta. We'll take your calls, too. If you want to join the conversation, if you have experiences, if you're a teacher, you've got kids that you're concerned about, our toll-free number's here, 877-ROAM-777, 877-766-3777, and we're talking about Common Core. It is really folks, I don't know if you've heard about it. It's a name we'll have to get used to in our country because it's coming to your school whether you like it or not. It's the idea that there should be a common curriculum all across the country when it comes to schools. And it's probably not a bad idea as long as it's the right curriculum. And you would think that people who came up with the idea would have put it out there, would have seen if it works on its own merits. But that's not what's happening. It's being imposed by the federal government through the threat of actually withdrawing federal money from states that don't comply with Common Core standards. And that's an interesting point, Doctor. I want to pick it up on that as well because a lot of states I know got on board with this because they wanted the money. Now they've had it. They're seeing that this is not good for the youth of America. It is not good for our country. And they want out, but the government's putting a gun to their head saying, too bad. You want out? Pay us what you owe us.
The big problem is that everybody, including most secular liberal educators, admit No Child Left Behind was a disaster. And all Common Core does is enshrine the worst aspects of No Child Left Behind. In other words, it's No Child Left Behind on steroids. And by that I mean what you're dealing with Common Core is outcome-based education. This one-size-fits-all paradigm that all kids, regardless of ability or effort or opportunity, will end up in the same place. And you know as well as I do, and this is the great problem with No Child, that when you set these arbitrary standards and insist everybody meet them, well, inevitably lots of kids can't, and lots of teachers are unable to get the kids to the standard. So inevitably the standard keeps shrinking back. And that's what's happening here. You mentioned the blackmail. I mentioned how the federal government bribed states to take Common Core. Mm-hmm. Well, states like Georgia, classic example, a couple weeks ago, Georgia tried to pull out of Common Core, but then the federal government said, well, if you do that, we're going to pull millions of dollars back out of your state education budget. And so Georgia's in a bad situation now.
That's terrible. Well, it's basically blackmail. Too bad. It's not working for your state, and then you're going to have to suffer as a result of it. You know what? Pay us what you owe us or keep the program. And that really is tragic.
About this too, Drew.
Yeah.
This will be the difference between No Child Left Behind, which was a disaster, and Common Core,
right,
is for the first time, Common Core federalizes this. One of the things that helps defeat No Child and ultimately get rid of it is because local state boards of education, local school districts recognized how bad it was and fought it. But once you turn Common Core over to the federal government, that's the big step in that direction. This will be the first federalized curriculum we have, and it's almost impossible to beat that back once it gets going.
My guest today, Dr. Duke Pesta, will take a few quick calls. I need to take a break here, though, Doctor. When we come back, we'll talk more. We'll talk about the impact it's going to have, what it means in terms of cost, what it means in terms of the future of education for our kids, and how we as a nation will compete. Right now, they've rolled out, and correct me if I'm wrong right now, I guess it was math. What was the other? English? Math and English,
right? Math and English.
Math and English. There's more to come. And some of that is really where I think some of the great danger lies. We'll fill you in on that more. Stay with me. I'll be back in just a few seconds. All right, 47 minutes after the hour. Let me translate that. 13 before the top of the hour. It's a better way of looking at it. Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. I've been getting a lot of feedback, both in my email and on Facebook, about Common Core. And there was a man recently arrested over the weekend because he spoke out against this and has been manhandled. That's another issue. We could decide whether or not the way he conducted himself was appropriate or not, and whether that was proper. But the issue draws light once again to a program, which has its roots in the Gates Foundation, promoted by the current Obama administration, and has not shown the fruit of its practice. It was interesting. Minnesota, one of the great states that listen to me, has adopted reading standards, but not the math standards, and it shows. The state standardized test scores came out a couple of weeks ago or last month, and they showed that about 43% of the students there are proficient in reading. That's an 11% drop from a year ago. The math scores showed a 3% increase over previous years. And state officials are saying that last year's test and this year's test are completely different, and this year's is harder, and math is anything like, like if reading's anything like math, that's a hard one to believe. But the other issue is that Catholic schools are now picking up on this as well. Catholic schools do not have to take Common Core. And yet there are many, many Catholic schools that have embraced this. My guest today is Dr. Duke Pesta. Doctor, the test results do not look good for those who have embraced this curriculum. We have already seen reading and math, but Catholic schools who've always seemed to excel and outperform public school institutions in terms of academics, why would they embrace something that is really untested and based on the results that are now beginning to come in, does not look promising?
When you look at the people who put Common Core together, they are radically opposed to Catholic education. There is nobody who put this curriculum together, the small group of people, including Bill and Melinda Gates, who are for radical population control, for instance, through birth control and abortion in places like Africa. Nobody who put this curriculum together is friends of Catholic education, number one. Number two, you already have a Catholic education that is superior both to the public school education and superior to Common Core standards. There is no good reason whatsoever that Catholic schools are running to the front of the line to volunteer to take a curriculum that is going to be so one-sided, one-dimensional. To say nothing of, you're forcing your hand here. By taking it, what the Catholic schools are doing is they are helping to ensure that all future textbooks will be Common Core oriented. Because if the Catholic schools just stayed out and watched for a couple of years, let's even play devil's advocate here. Let's say Common Core standard is the greatest thing since sliced bread. If that's true, in 2 years we'd know it. And then if the Catholic schools want to migrate, great. There's no reason to be doing this now. And by doing it now, you're guaranteeing that there are going to be very few textbooks that Catholic schools can use once this gets rolling.
All right, let me grab a few calls because time will go quick. 877-766-3777. Let's go to Cynthia in Chicago first. Cynthia, good afternoon.
Hi, Drew. I wanted to wrap this up in a nutshell for you. I'm in a master's program at a Catholic university in Chicago, and I'm getting my certification, but we're a cohort, so there's other people in there just getting a master's, and they have their certification. And several of those people are teaching in the Chicago public school system, so they're inner city teachers. And we've had discussions on this, on the Common Core, because technically they're training for us for this, because that's what's out there. But we've had discussions on this, and the inner city schools have said the loudest that this doesn't work for them because it takes away their creativity and the ability to touch that area, because they're not going to see results from the inner city kids that they think they're going to see out in the suburbs. But I just think it's really interesting what you're saying, because I think there is definite proof that, making this, such a stringent law and in what to follow, it really makes being a teacher non-creative and just limited to, if you live on the East Coast, then you should know this.
Right.
So I mean, it's not allowing for people to put real life applications to what they're learning, and instead it's becoming like a standardized test.
Yeah, very interesting. Let me, Cynthia, let Dr. Duke respond to you. Dr. Pesta, go right ahead. Cynthia, I think, brings up a very interesting point.
It's a great point, Cynthia. And, one of the areas of criticism of Common Core that unites both conservatives and liberals. There are a number of groups out there of conservatives and liberals who've teamed up on this. Kids in poor, disabled kids, handicapped kids, mentally challenged kids, special needs kids, kids in low-performing school districts, they're the ones who are really going to be hammered by this curriculum. And so there's an alliance across the board on this. But look at it this way, that if you have one arbitrary standard, what you can't worry about are the kids below, and what you can have are kids excelling above. So the more kids you have that are exceeding the standard looks bad. And if you have a whole bunch of low-performing schools, a lot of the inner-city schools, that makes the test look bad as well. The teachers are going to pay the price for that, because if you can't get your kids up to the standard, the teachers get fired. So what happens? Yep. The standard keeps pulling back.
All right. Hey, Cynthia, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I got to move along. Let me move to Joe in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Joe's got an interesting question, too. I like it. Joe wants to know, could we see any positive development from this? Joe, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Drew, and good afternoon, doctor. Thank you for taking the call. One of the things that comes to my mind as I hear you talking about this is that, from a Catholic perspective anyway, given the fact that it's the parents that are to be the primary educators of our children, be it academics, but also just character formation. The curriculum that is now in our schools that's supported by our federal government isn't something that as Catholics I can think that on a frequent basis we can even agree with. And so I wonder, given the, as I understand it, Plato once said the two most important questions in life are, and I'm sure those can be debated, but they are very important questions. Who's teaching the children and what are they teaching them? And the left knows this, and the right knows this, and the Catholic Church also knows this. And we have an obligation to take our educations back into our homes, back and give the proper formation to our children, because what's being taught in our schools and what our government is actually supporting, a government that supports, the murder of 50 million children, we really have to take a look at why are we allowing them to even provide funding for our education. Let's just take it back ourselves and do what God wants us to do.
Yeah, well said.
Joe, that is a great point, and I'm with you 100% on that. I go a little bit further, too, and say this also calls into question the wisdom of our Catholic schools jumping on board of this federal curriculum. I mean, I agree with you. The parents are the first primary educators. Let's get the government out of school altogether. I'm with you. But then you ask our Catholic schools, too, where we send our kids to Catholic schools because we want that Christian, that Catholic formation. And we are now signing up for a curriculum. I don't care how much you say you're going to modify it to make it Catholic. Why start with something untested, put together by people with really bad intentions with regard to Catholic education, and pretend somehow you can put lipstick on a pig and make it kissable?
Yep, you got it. Hey, Joe, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. All right. Sure. Go ahead. One final thought.
Well, thank you. I think the doctor brings up a very good point, and I think that's why the Catholic Church, from the top down, we really, really need to take a look at what's going on in our Catholic schools, because it says Catholic on the door, but there are a lot of people from within the Catholic Church, or so-called within the Catholic Church, that are really not in accord with the teachings of the Catholic Church. And so people who send their children to Catholic schools think they're getting a Catholic education when actually they have a different agenda, and it's much more consistent with what our government is serving up, and that's why they're embracing it.
All right. Hey, Joe, thanks. Doctor, I want to go back, grab a few more calls before you do it. Just a quick note. We see math, we see English. What's going to happen to our children? Will there be mandated education when it comes to two moms and two dads, when it comes to transgender issues, when it comes to health and sexuality? Is that going to be part of the agenda here? And how are Catholic schools going to deal with that?
Absolutely, it's coming. The health standards are getting ready to be rolled out. The mainstreaming of homosexuality. Planned Parenthood has a hand in some of the curriculum that's being written. And so what the Catholic administrators tell us is that, we don't have to take that. It's a disingenuous argument. There's a huge disconnect with the Catholic schools between the bishops and the priests, our clergy, and then the people in charge of education in these districts. I know that's true in Green Bay. It's true throughout Wisconsin and the country. The people who run the education program for the clergy all across the country, they're public school teachers, and in many instances, they're not even Catholics. Many of our Roman Catholic schools don't have Catholic school teachers, and all of our teachers are trained in the public schools, and so they've gotten this education degree that is highly secular, highly progressive, and then what needs to happen is we need to get our clergy and our to take charge in this and recognize the dangers to Catholic identity that are coming with this curriculum.
All right. Cynthia in Green Bay, thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Thank you. And thanks for all you're doing.
You're welcome.
With Common Core. I was at a convention this weekend, and I learned about something crucial that we need to educate ourselves on, as well as our state legislators. It's called nullification. If a state puts a law, if the federal government puts a law on the states that's unconstitutional, the states can nullify that law. And there's history behind it. Wisconsin has done it. Other states have nullified laws. So that's one thing that we could do to actually help save our future of our children.
All right, well said. Let me ask you about nullification. What do you know about that, Doc?
It's a great strategy. Wisconsin's a state that has the option. If we get our act together, states can nullify. The problem is many states don't want to, simply because of the promise of federal government money. And so it's a rob Peter, pay Paul sort of situation we've got going on that very few people see this as good education.
Yeah.
But the government is pulling so many strings, has bribed to such an extent, and as we've already seen, you bribe them going in and you blackmail them coming out, that people just don't want to back off of this.
You're right. Well, look, I've got less than a minute to go. I'll tell you what. Last time we spoke, it was only a couple segments. Next week, come in studio with me. You come up here into our Green Bay studios, and we'll find a good time where we can really unpack and unfold this story, take many, many more calls, and educate people on what this means for the future of their school district and their children as well. Doctor, thank you for your good work. Before I let you go, what's a good place to get more info? People want it. freedomproject.com?
Yeah, if you go to fpeusa.org and click on the Common Core button, we've got all sorts of information for free. Lots of really chilling videos, too, not just of people being arrested, but of what kind of stuff goes on in Common Core classrooms.
All right, well said. My guest today, Dr. Duke Pesta. If you are a friend of mine on Facebook, I hope you are, go there, hit the like button. I just posted an article on Common Core. I'll post more later. And also that video of that father arrested at that school board meeting. You got to check it out. We'll be praying the chaplet when I return.